So this first round one of today's episode this is going to be the lifestyle one, right? Yeah, as it should.
We're talking about like the uncertainty with confidence, like having confidence in the uncertain aspects of like life and business, right? Like that's kind of what we have. I think it's interesting too, especially with what even with starting a run club like you've been, or starting our businesses, or in college. College is probably one of the more uncertain, not uncertain areas of life, because there's areas of life where it's like now is like the least amount of risk that you have, but there's like every day there's something new that can occur. So there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love my parents. Shout out mom and dad. But one of the things that
Love the preface.
from their childhood, there was a lot of uncertainty where they grew up. And so when they were explaining to me how to basically succeed in life, the way that they viewed that and the way it kind of came across was like the least uncertainty you have and the more security you have, then the better off you really are. And as I was contemplating entrepreneurship and taking risks, financial risks, it was something that I think initially at the beginning, there was a little bit of tension there between what they envisioned for me and what I was trying to do. But, and now it's resolved, but initially you have to understand when you're starting a business that there is going to be uncertainty, and you have to have that thick skin to be able to live in a period of constant uncertainty. But the uncertainty is not separate from confidence. So the way that I view entrepreneurship and how I believe that it's okay to take risks is being able to say, look, I don't know exactly what the end result is, but I have confidence that I'm taking every step and I'm taking every opportunity to learn from all of the different scenarios and circumstances and places. So for example, when I first started a business, I made a lot of mistakes, but it was all worth it because I was able to press forward and had that learning agility and shift. And I'm of the belief that if you keep pressing forward and learn, then the chances of success immediately low.
This is so hard for that.
Well, maybe that's the Lord's side. I need to shut up.
Well, do we want to do multiple takes of this intro?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just restart.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, doesn't matter.
We can always cut it.
We can keep going.
I like it. I think we should each talk a few times within the first 5.
Anyway, but yeah, I think along the lines, like you said, is the American dream is comfort. It's the idea of like finding the most steady spot to be. Now, obviously, like Gen Z generation has tended towards like entrepreneurship. It's more entrepreneurial than other generations, but that still means that there's only a few of us doing it. A few people actually willing to go and do hard things, have uncertain lifestyles, and not always know what's going to happen next. But I think it's also not only entrepreneurial, but a Christian lifestyle. It's just there's uncertainty in what you're doing, and it's faith in what you're doing, who's got your back, where your faith is to actually push forward and do the thing. I mean, in chapel the other day, Dr. White gave literally the best Hormozy sermon. He said, do hard things, and then gave scripture to back it up. And that, I was so pumped up afterwards. I told my dad, so my dad sends me like I'll open my phone, I get like 5 reels, like Hormozy, Andy Elliott. Like, think of all those guys. He doesn't like Andy Elliott at all, but it's some Will picture his bicep big.
Pretty good. I do want to touch on the point that you said with our generation and entrepreneurship. Let's talk to Cable for this when you're out at some breakfast. Do you actually think that this generation is entrepreneurial, or do you think that it's being romanticized? Good question. And it's like the ideal. So we've seen all these different influencers and we see their lifestyle, but let's be honest, we don't see what they did to get to that point, right? Everybody wants the view without the work, right? That's what Hormozy says. And so do you think that entrepreneurship is like, yeah, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but then when they actually realize, oh, this is what it takes, like, do they actually want to be it, right? Do you think that there's like, people say they want it, in reality they're like, I just want a lifestyle associated with it?
I think in our perception of being entrepreneurs ourselves, we're like, man, there's not a lot of people that want it. Compared to past generations, there are more.
For sure. That's agreeable.
That's, I think, the idea is that the Gen Z generation is the most entrepreneurial, but they are all entrepreneurial. It's still only a slight percentage of the actual population that is entrepreneurial. It's just that percentage is, I don't even know if I'd say that percentage is bigger because obviously our generation is larger, but there are just more people in general, like the total number.
You know what's interesting though is like we grew up, like our big thing was COVID, right? There was so much uncertainty with that, and now we're like, people want to be entrepreneurs, like, and there's uncertainty past. Like that's weird how people are looking for uncertainty because they're looking for entrepreneurship when they were just confronted with a crap ton of uncertainty through COVID. Maybe that's just like a little weird, I don't know, dynamic.
You have to be okay with it. Like you have to almost enjoy the uncertainty in a way. Like it has to give you energy in a way. Because, I mean, let's be real. If that amount of uncertainty it keeps you from sleeping, like maybe you're not cut out to be an entrepreneur. Maybe it's not for you. And then entrepreneurship's it's not for everyone. And that's okay. But when it comes to being an entrepreneur, you have to almost fall in love with that. And it's not a fall in love with a risk that's unpredicted, but it's more, in my opinion, having the confidence that you're going to be able to learn from A, the mistakes you make, because you will make the mistakes, and B, being able to take what you learn and pivot appropriately. And so almost you have to have a confidence in yourself and your ability as a person to learn and apply what you've learned to your business. I mean, a lot of like Cormoji, we talk about him all the time, and I think there's a good reason for that. He had 6 businesses before he had that really big success at Gym Launch. I believe that if you stick with it long enough, and not stick doing the dumb things, but stick with the learning and and failing fast and pivoting from your failures, I think success is almost inevitable. And it might take 3 decades to get there, but if you can learn, and that's just something personally in my own experience, I made a lot of mistakes, but as I've learned and applied and pressed forward, I've started to see some of the fruits of being educated by my own dummy tax.
Well, Nick Fair, he says people underestimate the amount that they can do or overestimate the amount they can do in a year and underestimate the amount they can do in a decade. And I think like I'm 21, y'all are around that age. Like we've started a business, each of us. I think who's been at the longest when it comes to the business you've run around 2 years, around a year and a half, and you're a few months, right?
Yep.
And so like we're trying to find success within the first 1 to 2 years, when in reality, like that success is probably in the long run, definitely later down the line. And sometimes, and the frustrating thing is we see ourselves in contrast with other people on social media, whether our age with 6-year-old success, right? And so we're like, wait, I thought we could do this in 1 to 2 years. When in reality, man, like it's a decade plus long thing. And I just think that's something that with the uncertainty is like, we might be starting a business here and we might be doing this business 10 years down the line and the business still hasn't succeeded, right? There's uncertainty with that. So it is challenging, right? But there's like we've contrasted with, there has to be confidence, right? Because if you're just uncertain, you're not going to do anything and you're going to be like caught in this like analysis by paralysis, right? You just have to go for it. And I think that's something a lot of people don't do at the beginning. They don't go for it. They think that they have to have all these things in mind for them the perfect time.
And I think when lifting and fitness, I think there's a lot of similarities between that process and entrepreneurship, right? You have to be able to be consistent and go to the gym day in, day out at a consistent rate. And you're not going to see results for probably a good period of time. It doesn't mean that it's not compounding, because it is. And you're going to see those results if you stick with it. If you're doing all the right things, nutrition and sleep and hydration, those things all help. But it's the same thing with entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship is a little bit of a longer process, but it's the same mentality. I did collegiate running, and I think running, in my experience, was one of those things that prepared me mentally for entrepreneurship. Because I'll tell you what, there was a period of about a year and a half when I was training my tail off, and I did not improve. I had to get a surgery, and I had to come back from that. It took a year and a half for me to get back to the same level I was before. But I got there. I got there. But sometimes you have to just put your head down and believe that this is the process that leads to success. These are the things that I know work. I might have to go years without seeing any of the results. Same with fitness. You might have to lift for a long time before you can, go size up in your shirt. So that's something that I think lifting, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and I think like even though it may take years for what could be deemed as like overall success, it really only takes 6 months to like change your life. It only takes 6 months in the gym to see like noticeable, really good results from your work. For running, in the early stages of running, I think 6 months you can see a lot of growth. But once you start getting on beyond, same for the gym as well, that's where the growth rate starts to slow down. But regardless of how long that takes, I have 2 quotes here. One is, there's no dream too big, no challenge too great, nothing we want for our future that is beyond our reach. And so in going for that thing that's beyond our reach, I have the second quote from this person is, I've never met a successful person that was a quitter. Successful people never, ever give up. If you just don't quit, naturally success is the only other option. Now, it might not be the success that you imagine, but it will occur. But if you quit, this person by the name of Donald Trump said he's seen so many brilliant people that were quitters, therefore they were never successful. And then Hormozi has a similar line of the obsessed dumb person, an obsessed idiot will do better than a unobsessed, unfocused genius. So it's just the idea, if you can put in the focus to actually face the challenge, face the uncertainty, you could do it. And I mean, we figured that out with the gym, with running. It does work, but it takes time.
What do you think that why is? What do you think that motivation is, your why that pushes you through the uncertainty to keep you focused on the main goal, keep you pursuing what you've set out to do to begin with?
I mean, I think one of the first things for me is I just love the adventure. Like I hate it whenever it's the same thing over and over again. That's why I love farming. We have a farm, and there's 2 parts of it. One, there's the stuff you have to do every single day. You always have to milk the cows. You always have to feed the calves. You always have to feed the cows. You always have to scrape the barn. You always have to bed them. It's the same stuff every day, twice a day, over and over and over again. But in that, there's always something that goes wrong. Like it's farming, something goes wrong every single time. Whether it's a cow that's down, a cow that hurts themselves, a calf that just decides today, I will not eat. But you have to feed the thing. So there's always a challenge within it. And so I think it could be applied somewhere to entrepreneurship, where it might not be as cookie cutter of like, okay, these are the same things you need to do every day, but there's always something that you're working on that you might need to work on over and over and over again that is repetitive, but there's always going to be bumps and bruises going through that process, and you'll eventually get to where you want to go.
So for you, is the motivation is that you just love the process, that you are an entrepreneur through and through, that you chase the uncertainty because you love it?
I wouldn't say it's the main motivation. Like I love the adventure. The number one is the impact I want to make on other people. That's the main driver. And then along with it came the adventure of like, I figured out I want to make an impact on others. And then, I kind of figured out I like the adventure of figuring out how the heck I'm going to do that. And so beyond like, I want to make a kingdom impact through creating to inspire others to use the gifts that they've been given to then make an impact on others. Through that impact I want to make, I just found I love the adventure in doing that thing, and doing it with other people, collaborating with others, which is probably one of the more fun parts of it. Even though it's like, I feel like I could do better than the other people at times, even though that might not even be true, just inside of like, I should be doing that. I could do it better. But it's probably not even true, and they probably could do it better, and they actually have the time to do it. So just being gracious and being humble in that is like, I need to work with other people because we are called to, I think.
Adam, a question for you. It goes off because I'm curious, but we've talked about before how there's been people that aren't always in support, whether it's explicitly or the way that they sort of talk about your projects. That can be like really discouraging sometimes. And like in your experience, how have you waded through the people that sort of naysay or don't, sort of make light of the things that you're really serious about? And how do you have that? How do you keep that confidence to keep pushing forward?
Yeah. So Jordan Peterson says that you have to have something that you're not only running to, but something you're running away from. And I've been guilty of this. Something I'm trying to work on. I have an ego, 100%. And so I've realized that, but at the same time, there is a benefit to having an ego. And there's maybe a hot take, and maybe I don't even understand it right, and maybe I'm wrong in this. But whenever I hear somebody, first of all, say something that is discouraging, don't hold it against them. I'm just like, okay, I see where you're coming from. And I definitely thought of that. What I do is I write it down in my notes, and I don't put their name next to it. Like, I don't try to associate the negative thought with that person, but I put their name down. And whenever I feel discouraged, I look at that document, and I try and I read through it. Whenever I'm I'm not motivated and I see all these different things about what people have said about what I'm trying to do, I'm like, oh, sick. So why did I bring up the ego? It's because my ego doesn't want me to fail to prove them right. I have too big of an ego for that. And like I said, maybe, and that's the thing I'm running away from. And maybe it's a toxic way to frame it. But at least I have some form of motivation that gets me going. Right? That won't last me a decade. It's a fuel that only lasts the initial point of launch starter. Exactly. So I got to find something greater than that, 100%. But at the beginning, I'll use that if that gets me go.
If it initiates action and it's not something you're holding against somebody long term. I think as dudes, it comes against our masculine nature. Like, we don't want somebody to tell us that we can't or shouldn't do something just because they don't believe in us. And so, yeah, I think there's certainly a healthy way to view that. I think one of the ways to do that is to, like you mentioned, you could have that motivation, but keep it disassociated with the person. Because I think
That's the crucial element.
if you have it associated with the person, you're going to harbor even bitterness towards them. But if you keep that in your mind, people they don't believe that you're capable of doing something. And this is an opportunity to basically prove that, and prove to yourself, I think most importantly, that you can't. And what I really think is interesting is, I think sometimes when people say these things, the reason that they stick with us is because it actually resonates with the internal thoughts that we face ourselves. And that's combative on the inside.
Yeah, it's evidence against what we're trying to do.
But what I'm saying is, I've had people who, they kind of joke about, the business, Yeah. And, but the reason it's hurtful is because it's the same uncertainty and doubt that I have to fight each and every day as to why I'm spending my time doing something like this.
100%.
And so that's when it becomes real, and it becomes more of a tangible thing when someone else says it. And I think it brings it to the top of your mind, and then that's when you can fight it. And it's really just an internal battle at that point.
So I got a question for both of you guys. So you have a girlfriend, you have a fiance. We're talking about uncertainty, right? You single, and I'm single. Oh, so that's why I bring it up.
Right about waiting to say that he is open and ready to mingle.
That's not that last part.
Man, we're getting really deep, Aaron. You really threw us off.
No. This is good. So from a biblical perspective and a traditional perspective, the men of the relationship are supposed to provide, right? They all hear that. Mm-hmm. How do you balance that with the uncertainty associated with the business, right? You're like, no, I need a stable, as we've kind of been in some way, shape, or form told by our parents, like a 9 to 5 is certain. Like, this is like, you'll get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and you'll have some form of a foundation that you build through a 9 to 5, which isn't wrong. I get that. But how do you, like, as entrepreneurs and as starting a business, how do you balance that uncertainty of, like, I don't know if I'm gonna actually have money to pay rent? I mean, we're not at this point, but I'm saying here in the future, like paying rent and all those things with the business, there's so much uncertainty. Like, so how do you guys, have y'all thought about that, first of all? And if you have, like, what are your thoughts behind that?
One of the most impactful pieces of dating or relationship advice that I heard was, look at the person that you're with and look at the goals that you have in life and extrapolate them to that goal. And that if they match up, then that's something that would make sense. So let me explain that. So, for example, you might be with somebody, a woman might be with a guy who's trying to start a business that fails. How does he react to that failure? Does he push forward and learn and try again, or does he quit? And so there might be times when the woman has to look at a guy and say, maybe he starts a business and he was really stupid with it and it fails and then he doesn't do anything about it. That's not somebody that you probably want to be with. You want to be with the guy who's in the arena, who gets knocked out but gets back up and is ready to go at it again and remembers the moves that his opponent made and so he doesn't trip up again. That's the kind of person you want to be with. And so I actually had a conversation last night with my fiance. I was like, look, I'm in a couple of different ventures right now, and it's really challenging. And I haven't, I'm not really seeing success with any of them that I want to see right now. A lot of them are just starting up, and I don't know. There's uncertainty of what this will look like. But I said, I am confident that the things that I am learning right now are going to pay dividends for the future. And maybe it is a decade or two down the road. And so my biggest thing is knowledge, experience, high value skills are the most important things you can invest in right now. I tell you what, if my first business, if I never started that, if I didn't take that leap of faith, if I didn't make all those mistakes I did, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have met the amazing network that I have now of Christian entrepreneurs that I get to talk to and glean wisdom from. None of that would have happened. Would have never gotten to podcasting. Would have never met my mentor. None of that would happen. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met you if I didn't say, all right, I'm going to pitch this idea. I'm going to start this business. And you know what? Right now with Glubs, it's not anything to speak about. But that opportunity that I took then has opened up more opportunities, and it's the next level up. And so if Glubs fails, I told her, I said, if Glubs fails, I don't know if it will, if it won't. I'm going to keep pressing, I'm going to keep learning. And that's the extrapolation I think that women should look for is, what is the next move the guy is going to make? Is he going to quit or is he going to keep going? Because like we said at the beginning, I think if you keep learning and you keep moving forward, then there's a high chance of having that success. And your point about working a 9 to 5, your employer could say, nah, you're cut anytime. And that's the mindset. I think it's a fake sense of security.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Especially in the economy. But from the guy's side of things, I think whenever you're looking at a partner to have, whenever your goal is entrepreneurship, if you are a pure blood, purebred entrepreneur, you just have to make sure the goals align with them. So on the flip side of if a business fails, if the income starts to dwindle at that point, or the income in the beginning, I mean, you need to make sure you guys are aligned that it is possible that the first 10 years you will be broke. That is possible.
Very true.
Not guaranteed, but also not guaranteed, where you could be broke for 10 years. So make sure, like, if you're finding that person, are your goals aligned to where they're like, I am okay with that. I'm okay with not getting the fanciest stuff, fanciest house, fanciest clothes, everything across the board for 10 years with the not certain chance that it could be super successful and then I get all those things, or it's going to be a battle for a while. It'll always be a battle regardless, spiritually, relationally. But if you can make sure that your goals are aligned, then that means they're along there with you.
But the question is, what does your woman value at the very core? Does she want to be with you as an entrepreneur because she wants to be by your side just when you succeed, that's it? Or does she love you for who you are, is going to fight alongside you and believe in you, even when you're fighting off the monsters who are just trying to keep things going? Because both are a possibility. You have to have somebody who's got to be with you, thick and thick.
100%. Yeah, they need to be with you. And then also the realization of, like, how do they respond whenever your business fails as well? Like, some guy, like, if it turns out where the business fails, then they pressure you so hard to, like, okay, we need, like, the staple job. they have quit before you have. And the amount of effort it would take for you to then get back on the horse and go again, too much. It won't work out.
When you guys were figuring out if the current relationships you're in, what were the avocation wise? What did you see, and what did you try to examine within those relationships? And you're like, this one's a keeper. Like you guys just said, okay, this is what you wanted, right? So, and you guys are both, you're engaged, you're still dating. So there's clearly, those things are both applicable, both the girls you guys are in a relationships with. So how did you parse that out, and how did you be like, yeah, no, this one's good?
Yeah. And obviously, Cooper is farther along in his relationship than me. But I think it's the constant communication over what goals in life are. Like, it shouldn't be the early stages of conversation. You can be like, okay, favorite color or whatever crap in the beginning.
If you started first date off at that, I don't know if that would, yeah.
But it's like after a while, like 2 or 3, 5 dates in, hangouts, whatever, it needs to be conversations of like, what do you want your life to look at, and what do you definitely not want your life to look at? Because then if you know exactly like what their dream goal, what their absolute not is, this is where it ends. It's not, because my dream goal and my absolute not, neither will occur either. So it's how close those two can like, or the goals go together for the new goal that you would want to have. And so establishing that to make sure like they are okay and willing and wanting to find a common goal, that would work out. Especially with entrepreneurs, like we're dreamers, visionaries. So we already extrapolate like what we kind of want over the next 20 years, 30 years, or a whole life. So then it's hard. It's almost, I would almost argue it's harder for us to give that up like fully. Like we'll still have parts of it, but it's harder for us to just like find that common. So being willing with someone who's willing to fight you on it, but also like work with you on it and finding the common ground, common goal that you could both work towards. And that's been helpful for me. Just constant conversation, like weekly, even bi-weekly, just like hashing it out. And at times uncomfortable, at times kind of cool. Just figuring it out.
Yeah, I think you guys just got to get the main things sorted out first, right? And the way that, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, Will. We do have a lot of deep conversations. I mean, I don't really believe in wasting your efforts on somebody who doesn't want the long-term things that you want, or is not going to be willing to put in the work towards the things that you find valuable. So you got to find that right person, right? The values are the same. For us, the main thing for us, it's living a life that's for God, and living a life that where we value family and each other. And so I know she's going to love me throughout, whether we're rich or poor. Like there's no doubt in my mind she's going to love me no matter what income I'm able to bring in for the family. But the things that we've agreed upon that will not change is that we live for God, and we live to, and we spend time with our family. And that's the most important thing. So as entrepreneurs, like, you could be putting in 100-hour weeks, but that's not going to help you in a relationship. It's not. If you don't spend the time with the person that you say you care about the most in the world, like, that's really the seasons. And that's why I do think there's important for, your woman to understand the nature of entrepreneurship, especially in the tough times. But you can't make entrepreneurship your God. You got to put work in, but you can't make it your God. And that's, you have to talk through with that person. And my fiance, she's not entrepreneurial, and that's okay, but she understands what I'm doing. And so those are just some key things that I've learned. And at the end of the day, I know she'll let me through, thick or thin. So it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And making sure it's like someone that's, I wouldn't say on your level, because that could be just like taken out of context or whatever, make it weird, but just someone who is willing to put into work to become the same as you, in the way that, like, if you want to be a successful person, they need to want to be a successful person, whatever they do. And that could be success in the house, in the workplace, in a certain sense. So whatever their thing is, whether it's leading in the church and they just want to be very, very involved in the church, or if they want to have a practice that they open or serving in science or whatever, medical, they just need to have a similar drive to where they want to be as successful as you in that area. You don't have to be number one in the world. You just have to be willing to want to be number one in your area.
Very true.
You want to strive for the best. So
They have to understand hard work. So they have to understand hard work and dedication, and that there's actually a purpose for the life that we live.
purpose-driven life.
Absolutely. It was absolutely. So
Yeah, and it's, I know we'll talk about this on our next episode, but it's like, it's a purpose-driven life, right? It's a perfect purpose-driven life right now, because tomorrow we're not promised tomorrow. I know that's cliche, but every time I wake up, I pray. And I started to incorporate, like, I heard this in chapel a few days ago. Thanks for your breath on my lungs, right? Because you're not promised that day. And so to try and orient yourself to that, where it's like, you should be thankful you woke up, because some people didn't. I have friends who work in the nursing field. I just found out the guy just got shot, right? Like, he wasn't promised that day, and his day ended, unfortunately, right? So at the end, I think it's super important to cherish, right, that day, and to make use of it, because we're not promised a decade that we're trying to plan out our whole list tomorrow. Or that's
So it's the Psalm, teach us to number our days so we get a heart of wisdom. Psalm 90:12, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Yeah.
And then likewise with the quote from Gary Vee, which I love, it's have patience in the long term. Like, have patience, and if you have faith in God that he'll give you that time, you don't take for granted, but if he gives you this time for these goals that you set, have patience in that, but have urgency in the day that you work about. So be urgent in the work you're doing. Don't be lazy about it, but in your urgency, be patient for what's to come and the actual results of that work you did. Great. Being willing to work for a long period of time without a reward. Since I think it's the same we apply to relationships, where it's like a lot of people, like, even like back in the day, like even before like the quote unquote not as entrepreneurial generations, like Warren Buffett, he didn't get into his billions until he was like 50 or whatever, something like that. It was like 40 or 50. So it's like, just entrepreneurship isn't a fast track way to success. It's honestly, could be even slower. You could argue.
But if you're looking at being successful at age 50, you don't start when you're 49. You start learning the skills and getting the practice now.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that I want to help build that urgency into young entrepreneurs and people who go to college. And look, now is the time to really dig in.
There's no bad time.
You have the energy, you have the resources, especially if you're at school, you have the network, dig in and learn. And you don't know how this is going to help you in the future, but you can predict what skills are going to be high value down the road. And as we close out this episode, I want to bring it back, Will, to what you said at the beginning. You talked about the American dream. And one of the really just inspiring things to me was when the initial settlers started heading out west. And you want to talk about uncertainty, where it's not just uncertainty of whether I'm going to, business is going to succeed or not. It was, am I going to survive through this next season? You got to survive this winter. You don't know if you're going to have enough food. You don't know if there's going to be a grizzly bear that comes out and gets you. You don't know if there's going to be, hostile people that come and attack you. You have no idea. And you're relying on faith, and you're relying on, just, you don't know. And so I think that's the spirit of entrepreneurship in a way, is let's take this on. Let's head out to the west. Let's tackle this thing. And we may not make it over the mountain. We might not. We might die, but we'll die knowing that we tried our best, given our God-given abilities, to go out and win the world for him. And so that's something I want to encourage people with.
Yeah, I think it's the original American dream. Like, there's the modern American dream, which started probably, I'd say, like the golden age, like 1920s. Not the richest we've ever been, but it was one of the more prosperous times for everyone in the United States. And then into the 50s after World War II. But like the original American pioneers, the original American patriots who pioneered the way into what we have now, that is what set up the modern American dream of comfortability and having comfort, because they freaking from 1700s and 1800s died all the time in pioneering for this new idea that they had. They fought multiple wars over it. They fought each other for it, and they pioneered and went out west for it. And that's what set up the success that the country has now. And that's been over 250, 300 years. And so likewise in your life, it's the setting it up in the beginning where you're dying over yourself and what you're doing, and you're laying down your cross and all of that. Like you're fighting for the future that is to come, whether that's later in your life or eternity.
Close us out, Mr.
So I think there's this quote that really encapsulates kind of this whole podcast that we're trying to communicate here. It's by Carl Jung. He's one of the three founding fathers of pretty much psychology. And it says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And I think that does a good job of trying to sum up what we've talked about today. Good stuff, guys.
Thank you. Good stuff.
I think that was a good pod. Phil, baby. That was good. I love that quote so much.